proving that you're a human being is actually only one of the attributes that we want to be proving.
Do you expect more adoption on the mobile or on the humanity scanner?
We are going to be rolling out these devices around the world so that people can actually go scan. And what we're scanning are two things.
Welcome back to the Rollup, your home for technical talks and open conversations that shape the modular future. Nothing on today's show is to be construed as financial advice. You can see our full disclosures list at therollup.co/ventures. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode after a quick word from some of our awesome partners.
RedStone is DeFi's modular oracle, supporting over 100 clients on over 50 chains and offering 1,000 assets. RedStone is the leader for Bitcoin staking and yield-bearing assets. They offer the most robust, customizable price feeds available in any model. Join the RedStone exhibition today.
All right, Terence, we are in Hong Kong, your native homeland here. How do you feel about the event so far this week? And welcome to the Rollup for the first time.
Well, welcome to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of energy, right? You know, I strolled through. I did a panel this morning. Strolled through the conference. I think it's a very good first edition for Consensus, and hopefully, it happens more in town.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a buzz around positivity and bullishness, even though I think the sentiment outside of Bitcoin right now is a little bit kind of shaky. This event for me is kind of characterized around institutions coming in and really being curious. It seems that there's a lot of Hong Kong native, like the Hong Kong dollar announcement, and a lot of kind of native people from Hong Kong and institutions really wanting to get involved here. So has that trend kind of grown over the last couple of years? Like what's been your experience doing business here?
I think, I think historically Hong Kong is a financial center, right? I think prior to COVID, it was historically always sort of the second largest stock exchange in the world, after New York. And so there are a lot of financial professionals in town, whether it's locals from China, expats, whatnot. And I think, obviously with digital assets, with crypto, a very big component of it is finance, right? That's still one of the big use cases. And so I think people are super excited. The government is also rolled out regulation for exchanges, for licensing. So in general, I think everybody's super bullish. Yesterday, I was actually at an event organized by Yak from 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵, where the financial secretary was there with us, as well as the regulator for the Securities Commission. So I think they're all very happy to engage and be part of the Web3 ecosystem.
Awesome. Well, we're here at the Humanity and the Rollup Open House Day 2.
Yes.
Had a good party last night, good turnout. This is the first time our audience has heard about Humanity, so maybe you could give us the TLDR, and maybe by starting about the problem space that we're looking at here with the evolution of AI, of kind of digital identity, and there's a lot of kind of verifiability is something that we talk about a lot on a show. So maybe starting with kind of the problem that you're aiming to solve, would love to get a deeper understanding of what you're aiming to build with Humanity.
So, with Humanity, we're building an identity blockchain. Okay? I think identity is something that a lot of people in the crypto space have been talking about for the longest time.
Since the ICO days, when we were promised so much.
Since the ICO days, all sorts of random stuff that, people dream up. But, I think, decentralized identity, DIDs, blah, 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 that sort of stuff has always been sort of seen as something that should come, will come, and is probably more serious than most of the other sort of ICOs that were happening. But I don't think anybody's really been able to sort of pull it off. I don't think it's a technology issue. I think it's more sort of a go-to-market issue. And when we think about what we're trying to do with Humanity Protocol, we are innovating with something called Proof of Humanity. And for us, Proof of Humanity involves partly proving that you're a human being. We're leveraging biometrics to do that. I'll show probably a demo shortly, but the way we think about it is that proving that you're a human being is actually only one of the attributes that we want to be proving on Humanity Vertical. Right. So for us, we are actually using verifiable credentials natively integrated into the chain so that we can prove many different things, potentially, where you work, where you went to school, your nationality, your age, whether you're an accredited investor, your how much money you have, whatever it is, right? But starting with the very core attribute, which is whether you're a human being or not. And I think this is going to be more and more important over the coming years. I think you ask somebody 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, hey, prove that you're a human being, you probably would find it pretty absurd. I think now that absurdity has disappeared because it's very clear that, especially in the online world, you really can't tell.
Yeah.
The social media accounts. Do you know whether it's really it's a bot or it's ChatGPT, or is it a human being? You really can't tell, right? And then you look at photos, videos, deep fake generated stuff.
Yeah.
You can't tell.
The idea of an original thought or an original idea is quickly escaping our grasp.
Absolutely.
As a society.
Absolutely.
There's an existential question to answer. Is there any more original thoughts?
I think, but this is a separate topic, but I think, even thinking about like the next generation of kids in terms of education, like I think there are a lot of unanswered questions in terms of how to deal with that. But back to what we're trying to do. Essentially, I think we're leveraging blockchain. We're creating sort of credentials for many different things.
Okay.
Prove employment, prove education, prove you're not sanctioned, prove you're an accredited investor. And there are many different use cases for this, right? So starting with sort of the proof of personhood piece, I think, at least in the crypto world, the probably most common thing is like airdrops. Like you kind of want to make sure you're not sending airdrops to somebody who's controlling 20,000 addresses, right? So there's that. But then, you even look at like games, right? Like cheating and you kind of want to be able to playing games against other people. Like it's kind of stupid when you're not. And then all the way to, looking at social media platforms, like, how do you know, knowing that it's a person or not, or it's content that's created by AI. And then you look at stuff like LinkedIn, you don't really know whether it's true or not, right? Like you told me you went to University of Florida. I don't know if it's true. But you might have been kicked out, right? Like you really, kicked out, dropped out, whatever. Like you literally don't know, right? Like, short of me calling up the university and checking against that, right? Like somebody might say, hey, I work for this company, and I've experienced that before. Hiring somebody where they say, hey, I've been working here for 2 years. It turns out it's not true, right? So these sort of things, I think, will become more and more important as time goes on, where it's becoming easier and easier to fake things.
Right? For financial benefit, for
whatever
social benefit, for there's a lot of reasoning as to why this is happening. Then okay, so one pushback here is we are giving so much of our data to big corporations today, to governments, corporations, etc. We trust these LLMs that we're entering our queries into, Anthropic, OpenAI, Grok, all of these, right? And we don't really know what's happening with that. So when it comes to building in this kind of blockchain-oriented environment with humanity, how are you guys thinking about the user data question and the kind of privacy question around, when I participate in my hand scanning or in my proof of personhood or proof of X, Y, and Z? How are you thinking about the user protection, which maybe is not the sexiest question, but I think
I think it's important, right? So on the biometric side, we use palm prints and palm veins for scanning, because everybody's unique. None of the raw data is ever stored. We take a biometric signature and then hash it and use it for comparison, right? When it comes to other pieces of data, what we're doing with Humanity Protocol is we're relying on something we call identity validators. So the identity validators are the ones that, issue the credential, and that information does not sit with us, does not sit on chain. If your university wants to issue sort of a credential saying that you went to the university, this is your GPA, et cetera, that data actually still sits with the university. All they're doing is issuing a credential onto Humanity Protocol. And what is interesting about that is by natively integrating this into our own blockchain, we actually, number one, we have a home with our own blockchain. So dApps can build there, there will be liquidity, et cetera. We will provide, applications and developers with the ability to essentially prioritize transactions, or even permission transactions, right? So I might want to have an app where only, a little bit like Facebook in the beginning, I only want people where, have Harvard University email addresses to be able to sign up, right? Like, so a little bit similar where we could actually say, okay, you know what, customizations, we this is an RWA platform with, some exotic securities. And so we only want accredited investors to be able to access the application. So these are things that we're able to do with Humanity Protocol directly on chain. But then for us, it's also about, partnering and working with other blockchains so that we enable proof of humanity and proof of X, Y, and Z for the other blockchains. We're partnering with Layer 0 for crashing capabilities, and then we're also working on integrating with some other blockchains directly.
Yeah, and so a couple of things there. One, I'm a big believer in sovereignty in terms of blockchains, meaning that controlling your execution environment is very powerful. It gives you a lot of options. You can build Humanity as a purpose-built chain with specific customizations, allowing for basically what we just talked about, permissioned use cases, verifications, these types of things. But I think the blockchain stuff is kind of the aside here. Like the big idea is like the total addressable market. So I was on a podcast with Akshat yesterday. We had him here. We were talking about founders picking the right game to play.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily how good you are at playing a specific game if you're not playing the right game.
Sure.
And what Akshat said, and what I think is very valuable, is that the biggest mistake that he's made in backing founders is backing those who aren't playing for a large total addressable market. Like if the market for this product isn't massive or large enough, then effectively, no matter how good the founder is.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. You want to build Facebook. You don't want to build Facebook for cat lovers.
Correct.
Like,
and so, but I think with Humanity, the total addressable market here is
massive.
Is everybody.
It's everybody.
So now we'll know that. Yeah. What's your strategy there?
The way we think about it is that, total addressable market is everybody. Everybody, down the road will need some sort of verification. It crosses many different industries. I think just now I mentioned, there's blockchain, but then there's also, social media, there's education, there's employment. We actually recently announced a partnership with DNA testing company, right? So, proof of person, it doesn't even just have to be biometrics, it could even be your DNA, right? So, and that company actually is listed on NASDAQ. They also have a cancer research arm, right? And so credentials for research scientists in the medical field, that is interesting. We recently also started installing some of the Palm devices into hospitals in Hong Kong for access control at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So that's being used by doctors and their staff for accessing places to make sure, hey, you know what, you get access to this area, but you don't, right? That sort of stuff. So I think it's massive. And when I think about sort of applications and people that can build on top of that, they're I can't even imagine the number of things that people can do. And ultimately, the way we look at this is something like Facebook. What does Facebook have, right? Or Meta. It's $1 trillion company where it's really just about owning all the different users and people, right? Like data and relationships, right? So how do we actually turn this, Humanity Protocol? I think the way we think about this sometimes is that we're building an open identity graph, right? So that open identity graph where you have, different sort of attributes, different sort of things that you want to verify. It's privacy preserving, it's self-sovereign. You get to choose who you want to present that information to. I think will become very, very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So people can build using this data in
and with your permission only, like with the user's permission. I think this becomes pretty powerful. And I think one other thing that's also interesting, I think, going back to what we were discussing earlier in terms of the ICO days and identity, and nobody's really been able to do it. I think historically in the identity space, there are companies like Facebook where they want to own everything, and they generate massive value for themselves by having that data. And then you have some projects that want to build sort of an open identity ecosystem or platform or whatnot. But I think sometimes some of these projects historically have been sort of swaying too hard the other way, in the sense that they are incredibly focused on making everything open, everything free, and I think the challenge for that also is, then nobody really has an incentive. And nobody can really, really scale it, right? I think the easiest way to think about this is, if I create a system where everybody can be issuing credentials and IDs for other people, quickly that, and it's all free, then there's really no incentive for anybody real to go do it.
Right.
So what we're doing is, as I mentioned, we actually have roles that we call identity validators. So it might be the University of Florida issuing a credential saying that you went to school there. It might be, you guys with the Rollup issuing a credential for you and Robbie saying that you guys are co-founders and some of your staff are work for the company. And then what we also have are what we call like the ZK proof for notes that we're going to be launching. And the whole idea is that they're running the proofs for presenting that information. And if an application or a dApp or somebody wants to make use of this information, then they actually have to pay a certain, sort of verification fee to the nodes, to the network, as well as to the initial credential issuer. So I was talking to a pretty big financial institution in Asia, the CEO, and he was saying, he has 30-40 million customers that they've KYC'd. They've spent quite a fair bit of money KYCing these customers. How can they get involved in something like humanity? I said it would be really interesting if you guys actually go issue credentials saying that these people are KYC customers of your firm, because down the road, when we look at sort of DeFi and some of the regulation around that, you kind of don't necessarily want to be KYC, for every single platform. And frankly, it might not even be necessary. But if I simply say, hey, if I might be comfortable as a platform, even in DeFi, saying, okay, if you are already, if you have a credential verified by JP Morgan, or HSBC, or Goldman tells me you're a high net worth individual, I probably trust that you're a high net worth individual.
And through the power of ZK, I actually don't need to provide these companies with that info, just the proof that that the information is correct and it's been verified.
Right.
And so that kind of brings that aspect into it. And that also answers some of the data privacy question, right? Which is, I think, important. So we have identity validators, and there's also ZK proof nodes, or these are one and the same?
They are two separate things.
Two separate things.
Yeah.
So the validators, the identity validators, are they the ones?
They're the ones issuing the credential.
Okay.
They're the ones issuing the credentials. And then the ZK proofers are the ones are node runners that are running the proofs.
So the ZK proof nodes are the ones achieving consensus.
Yes.
To validate the blocks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the identity.
Not to validate blocks. Just to validate the validity of the credentials, whether it's expired, whether it's correct, et cetera, and then providing that information to the applications in a privacy preserving way.
Understood. Okay. We have the device here, so maybe we can turn it on and we can give it a shot here and just kind of understand what's happening first and foremost.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I think if I'm registered already, so the way we are doing this is that we have a dedicated hardware where we've started rolling them out in a bunch of pop-ups around the world. I think we've done pop-ups in a bunch of cities in Europe. I think we've probably scanned at least 50, 100 people in the last day or two, even in Hong Kong here. But the what we're doing actually is this is on the biometrics and the proof of humanity piece. The very first attribute we want to sort out. And what we're doing is essentially you can sign up on our testnet, testnet.humanity.org. You get a human ID. And then what we're doing is we are going to be rolling out these devices around the world so that people can actually go scan. And what we're scanning are two things. One is your palm print, and the other thing is your palm vein. So the print is sort of the surface level patterns and creases on your hand. The veins is obviously the blood vessels underneath, right? So both of these things are completely unique to anybody in the world. And we're scanning both hands. And essentially we can make sure that, you're out of the 8 billion people who you are, essentially. And we a little bit different from sort of WorldCoin, where they're scanning their, people's irises, which is also unique. I think this opens up a lot of different opportunities for sort of offline use cases also, right? I mentioned access control, payments, maybe ticketing, that sort of stuff. And then one interesting factor with scanning the palm also is because whilst the palm vein does require the dedicated hardware module that we have.
This right here.
Yeah, for the infrared piece, the print can actually be captured just by your own smartphone. And as such, we can actually also use that for re-verification purposes, right? So I can quickly show here, even just on my phone, right? So if I just do this, since I'm registered on the testnet, it could actually easily recognize that this is my human ID. And I think you registered alone. You can also quickly do this.
Yep.
And it also ID. Yeah. So that imagine like
that at scale.
Imagine this at scale where, like, for example, your consensus ticket easily you could just be tied to this, right?
So instead of bringing my ID and having to show them a photo of my passport
stuff, and
because I had to show them a photo of my passport, I could just scan my hand.
That, and then on top of, and then from a security perspective, once you've done that, passport and ID thing, and you got your pass,
yes,
I technically, you technically could give it to somebody else, and they could easily walk in because, they're not going to obviously check every single time you go through security,
of course,
right? But in this case, we could literally make this, hey, you know what, you just go every time, and we can ensure that people aren't passing around their VIP passes or that sort of stuff.
Innovating finance, global, institutional, and on-chain. Deep liquidity to drive capital efficiency. Now maximize yields on institutional-grade liquid staking with 𝗵𝗶. Unlock $1 trillion of capital via 𝗵𝗶𝗃𝗃. All of this secured by Mantle's treasury of billions in stables and ETH capital pools. This entire ecosystem is coordinated by a vast network of seasoned VCs that are aiming to create the next generation of banking and financial technology. This is Mantle.
So does this device have a name then?
Yes. So we call this the Humanity Scanner, but we actually have a number of different form factors that are coming out. So this is the biggest one.
Okay.
Whereas the screen, this is mainly used for enrollment. But then we actually also will be launching a module where you can literally just plug into your own device, a tiny little thing you can plug into your own smartphone, for verification purposes. And then we also are rolling out, we rolled out a different form factor in the hospital, in Queen Elizabeth Hospital, for door with access control, et cetera, et cetera. So,
would you say that this is for more like, I suppose, like serious or secure use cases, whereas the phone is more mobile, it's more accessible, it can be used for things that maybe require, not that there's any difference between the palm and the vein per se in the technology that you guys have built, but in the accessibility aspect, would you say that do you expect more adoption on the mobile or on the Humanity Scanner?
So from our perspective, we don't consider you a fully verified human being unless you've gone through the hard,
which may be useful for a hospital door entry, but for a entry into a bar or entry into a I don't know, verifying
or whatever, we can allow people to just do it with the mobile app. Absolutely.
Okay.
Especially if the sample set of people is much more limited, right? So when you think about sort of biometrics, there's one-to-one matching, which is essentially your Face ID, right? When you go to your phone, you want to log in, it's not checking against anything else. It's literally just checking against that historical record of you.
Yes.
Right. And then what we just did just now, even with the palm print, is one to N, right? So essentially saying, okay, you know what? Who is this person, right? If it's just a palm print, frankly, 1 to N, that N cannot be very big. Okay.
Yeah.
That N cannot be very big.
Or else it'll take a while to figure out who it is.
No, because the problem is with just a mobile device, the challenge with your own phone camera is that the lighting conditions and different sort of things might be different, right? So if it's too dark or it may not recognize, right? But then with the vein piece, then it's for sure it's very robust, right? So for us, it's different form factors for different use cases, but ultimately, as you saw just now, like it would be very convenient for payment use cases, for access control use cases, for events.
When you send a wire transfer in today's world, what they give you if you're a large client, I'm sure you know this, you have the little device and you have numbers on it, and it's like a little 2-factor that you put into your phone or your computer when you're sending a wire, but it's like an analog 2-factor, but it's somehow still connected. It's like a battery in there or digital. This is very much
it's based on the timestamp.
Yeah, exactly. It's based on the time, and so this is very much so. It could replace something like that, right? Where
absolutely, like you have to plug it into your device, and you
do that, and it's like I'm doing this. It's me. Could also replace things like ledger signings and things like that, and multi-sigs, and there's a lot of crypto native and non-crypto native use cases. But a couple more things for you. When you're thinking about bringing this to the market, what's unique about Humanity Protocol for the crypto space is that it's a physical and a digital equation here. There's users on chain, there's users of the network in crypto native land, but that's not really who I think you're trying to appeal to in the immediate, mid, and especially long term. I think it's really about getting people on through these physical devices. So talk to me about your go-to-market. How will you get people to adopt Humanity scanners and the apps? And then this is going to segue into your business model and why you need a token.
So I think, from a go-to-market strategy, I think we're doing two things, right? We consider there to be sort of a B2C component where we are, getting people on board, scanning, maybe their potential incentives, and these are probably crypto native people or people who are at least familiar with blockchain. And then, there's sort of general use cases where we are building, ourselves or with ecosystem projects and whatnot, probably products that abstract all of this away, right? So you don't need to know, this could be a ticketing solution. This could be a ticketing solution. This could be an access control solution. In the back, it still runs through Humanity Protocol, but for a general user, they wouldn't know what's the difference, right? Like if you sign up for testnet now, you can directly use a social login with Google, with Facebook, with Twitter to sign up. So we want to make that user experience super, super simple. And then the other way we think about this is also, I think proof of humanity is one piece, but some of the other credentials, we do want to go through sort of a B2B2C sort of model. What I mean by that is when we work with, say, something like University of Florida, it could easily be the case that University of Florida issues a student credential for all the students, in which case they've just helped us onboard 50,000 people, right? We have proof of employment that's we're going to be rolling out very soon. I think that's absolutely pertinent in the crypto space. I'm sure a bunch of people have pretended to be you.
I mean, look at North Korea developers hacking protocols. faking as developers.
Oh, yeah,
right,
right, like pretending,
and then hacking.
yes, I mean, I God knows how many people have pretended to be exchanges to message me. I've had people pretend to be journalists,
They do that now, and they're getting in Zoom calls, and they're hacking all these things. Yeah.
pretending to be journalists, etc., etc. I have a friend who actually had her Telegram account hacked, and then sent a bunch of messages to her friends, including me. I almost got fucked.
Yep.
I was kind of lucky, but
Yep.
But-
So how does that tie into the B2B2C?
so the idea is that, it will be interesting if the companies themselves are issuing these credentials for their employees.
Yep.
Right. And then that essentially I'm dealing with that identity validator. That identity validator does this, then they help me onboard people also.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of me having to necessarily market to all the users of, all the employees of 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵𝗶, everybody, you just simply say, could simply say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to issue a credential for all of my employees.
Yeah. Or you go to like the like a top-down approach from a company perspective, and they effectively have a new part of their policy internally, or a new recommendation from the CEO that everybody joins this verification network, right? Something like
Exactly.
simple, right? And then that allows you to then just basically use your relationships that you built, your network, but it's an exponential return where your points of communication are, who you know and who you can be put in touch with, and they can scale
Absolutely.
from there.
Exactly.
So then with that being said, what's the business model for you, for Humanity? How do you guys make money? How do you guys generate revenue?
So we see ourselves as like sort of an infrastructure play, right? And so obviously the protocol is governed by a foundation, by Humanity Foundation, where there's UI, who's the acting CEO. He used to be was a Princeton Stanford guy who was Morgan Stanley, and then their other two board directors are actually 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵 and Yat from 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵. The way we think about this is that ultimately we want all the value for Humanity Protocol to accrue to a token. And how we're doing that is that essentially, as I mentioned, identity validators will have to stake tokens in order to be able to issue these credentials. Node holders will the sort of node people running the nodes will get some sort of reward, but that reward comes from verification fees that are being paid natively by the with the token, right? So that token, if I want to check for certain things, I want to check if you're a human being, or I want to check are you American, right? I'll pay a certain verification fee, where that fee will be split between the nodes, the network, as well as the initial identity validator that issued the credentials.
Okay. And that fee is charged to the end user, or to
the fee would be charged to the application, the DApp that wants to verify things.
Understand.
It's up to them if they want to put that fee on
the user,
or they, whatever, right?
Yeah, and then so when you guys go to bring this to somebody like 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵, you're not charging them to be verified.
I'm not charging them. But the likelihood is that there would be a staking requirement in order for them to go issue credentials, because we don't want everybody to be, I don't want anybody and everybody to be able to issue credentials that, it kind of doesn't make sense.
But doesn't it help the network if you have more and more credentials issued?
So down the road, we're still figuring this out, right? But down the road, we would potentially have a DAO that sort of governs, hey, who gets to issue credentials and sort of the staking requirements, et cetera, et cetera. But to start, it's sort of a slightly more centralized effort by us to onboard them. They would stake tokens in order to be able to issue these credentials. They wouldn't get charged for that. In fact, if they issue these credentials and these credentials get used by an application, they would actually get paid.
Understood.
Right? So this actually incentivizes credential issuers.
Got it. So as we're coming up to mainnet then, and the launch of the Humanity Protocol token, just more broadly, how are you thinking about the launch with regards to the recent rhetoric in the space of the high FTV, low float dynamic that has been kind of pushed away, and now is seesawed all the way towards meme coins, which we've now realized are, I think people probably realized it early, but now it's like, if you don't realize it, then you're out of the game, which is that they are more insider game than any transparent, VC allocation or raise with vesting. So how are you thinking about mainnet launch? Is there any timelines you can share, any alpha? And then more broadly, how are you thinking about the community and kind of this entire meta of launching? Because it's frankly becoming harder as a founder to do it right and to please everybody.
I think you can never please everybody, right? Like it's I was having this session with some investors of mine, and I think the way we look at this is we ultimately want to, I think when we look at some of the recent launches, some of the big launches, what ended up happening is that even though some of the projects are pretty big communities, pretty local communities, people sort of saw the token launch as the destination. I'm not saying the founders did, but at least, community members did, right? Like where they get their airdrops and, it's a dump.
They're out.
Right. I think from our perspective, this needs to be a long-term thing. So there will be sort of rewards for community, but we ultimately want to make sure that it's community that's going to last. It's community that really believes in what we're doing and can help us scale, right? So we're timing wise, we're still figuring it out. We don't have a set date. In terms of mainnet, we're targeting sometime between end of Q1 and beginning Q2. That's sort of where we are. And then with devices, we've started doing pop-ups because our first batch, we only manufactured I think 15-20 of them, but then we will actually have a second batch of 2,500 devices going out probably towards the end of March, beginning of April. And just to put in perspective, WorldCoin has around 1,000 𝗿s spread across the world. And so we're going to launch with around 2,500 devices.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts about takeaways from Hong Kong for those who couldn't make it? Any kind of ideas, information, thoughts that you've heard around the block that you can share publicly that you think are valuable to those who couldn't make it?
I think there's obviously there's a lot of excitement for crypto. I think with Trump. With Trump, crypto has become, at least historically, the biggest risk is sort of regulation risk with the U.S. Right. I think with Trump, I think he's made it a lot friendlier. So I think despite sort of some of the market sentiment in terms of people are it's either institutions focusing on BTC or it's sort of degenerate gamblers focusing on meme coins. I actually think the whole Libra thing is good for the industry. In that sense, it's a good cleanse, as you said, for people to know, hey, this is an insider's game. And then I think at some point the institutions will also start moving down. So your retail guys who are looking at just meme coins because I want to make 100x in 2 days, and then you have your institutions that are only focused on BTC. So it's almost like a bipolar situation. Speaking of a bunch of different people, I think actually some of the liquidity and capital will actually move back into more serious altcoins and projects that are actually building things, right? So I think that's going to be super healthy.
Yep, agreed. Terence, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.